Much, Joyce.
As Joyce so eloquently put it, you know, we are alcoholics ourselves. What she was explaining was, when you look at the Bible, which is a historical book of reference, when you look at approximately the chronology of the Bible from the year of 4000 down to the year of 1, this is from when Adam and Eve was in the garden, and the first written reference to alcohol was in the Bible, and that was in the book of Genesis, after the flood. Noah drank wine, and his sons looked upon his naked body. So when you look at that time, this is called BC. Now we go down to the end of 1, where there's the cross, and you go up here, and we're at 2009. And you look at 1930, when Silkworth came in. So we were kind of groping around in utter darkness for over 5,000 years about this substance called alcohol. Solomon wrote about it in Proverbs, which she talked about it. Also, before there was written reference to alcohol in the Bible, the Egyptians had hieroglyphics. They had pictures that would show that there was a great problem with this substance called alcohol. Alcohol has not changed. Human nature has not changed. And even today, after the 30s, when Silkworth came in and gave us an explicit explanation about this substance, we still are groping around in utter ignorance. And the only someone that has any type of insight about this disease is people like us. We can give an account that is explained by science. We can give a personal account of why we do the things that we do, and better yet, because of this great program of how we stop doing it. And when you look at this, see, this is BC and this is AD. And here we are in 2009, just a mere 70 years from Silkworth. And we've had more people to recover in those mere 70 years than all the annals of history. And I'd say that's not a small feat. And I'd say that not only is it a great accomplishment, but it also gives us, as I was saying last night, in regards to the power of our program, which hopefully over the next weekend we can get into and sort of explain a little bit of how it works. The other part is this. Joyce mentioned a disease. And when you look at and talking about a disease, we break that word down, and it's basically broken up in this dis-ease. Means we're back from ease. The Center of Disease and Control in Atlanta, Georgia, the CDC, and also the World Health Organizations here. There's 3 basic requirements that they have to look at before they deem a condition a disease. Case in point, H1N1 virus, bird flu. When those conditions came prevalent to the forefront, they had to look at them and see what they was before they call it a disease. And there's 3 basic things. One is that the condition has to have definable symptoms. Has to be asymptomatic. And the second thing is that it has to be chronic, reoccurring, incurable. And the third thing is that if left untreated, is it fatal? When we look at the disease of alcoholism, it fits that jot and tittle. One of the major symptoms of alcoholism is continued use despite consequences. That means we got the I can't help it. And see, people would say, lay people would say, they could quit if they want to. But they don't understand that when a person is in the grip of a disease, and this particular disease is unlike any other disease because this particular disease not only affects the person, but it affects everybody around it. Also, it's the only disease that tells you that you don't have it. And it's also the only disease that you have to self-diagnose. So this is a disease that fits jot and tittle, and what it is, it means that 1 person out of 10 is back from ease. You got 10 people, and you're going to have 1 out of 10 that's back from ease. 9 people can drink alcohol with ease. And Silkworth was one of the main people that gave us the insight of this disease, because as Joyce was saying in regards to the history, people thought we were sinners, weak will, lack of morals, just anything that you can think of. But Silkworth was the first one that says that any description of the alcoholic that leaves out the body is incomplete. You see, he was a neuropsychiatrist, so he knew something about the workings of the brain. But after studying and working with over 50,000 alcoholics, he said the body is sickened as well as the mind. And that was just eye-opening and complete, utter controversy, because how he explained that was he talked about an allergic reaction to alcohol, an allergy. But to better understand it, we first have to look at these 9 people over here. These 9 people, when they put alcohol in their system, the brain signals the liver and the pancreas to create enzymes of sufficient quality and quantity. There's enough of them, and they're strong enough to break the alcohol down into acetaldehyde, diacetic acid, and then down to the acetone level, and then into simple carbohydrates, and it passes out of the body as water. We urinate it out, or we pass it through the pores of our skin as perspiration, as sugar. We burn it as energy, or we store a little bit as fat, and through carbon dioxide, where we breathe it out. And this happens at approximately at the rate of 1 ounce per hour. And 1 ounce of alcohol, it's amazing that Joyce explained that. I could have explained the part about the drinking to the peg, but I thought it would have a little bit more weight coming from a Briton. You see, also from the drinking to the peg came the idea of the shot glass. And when you go in, you order a shot of liquor or spirits, see, there's no limit on how many you can drink. You just can't drink that much at once. So this drinking to the peg idea was to try to control the consumption of spirits or liquor or alcohol. A shot glass of spirits is about 1 ounce. A can of lager or small, half a pint of lager is about 1 ounce, and a glass of wine is about 1 ounce of alcohol. These enzymes that we have, or us, the lack of, it metabolizes and it works on the alcohol and it metabolizes out of your body. Right now, as we sit here, our brain is metabolizing and assimilating everything that we've eaten this evening, unbeknownst to you, unless you've either overeaten or something in your body that doesn't agree with you, and you can sort of tell it in your abdominal area. But if you ate the right amount and the right food and everything, you're sitting there just as comfortable, and your body is assimilating the amino acids and the nutritional value, and that just no good. It's sending it out to drought, and it's involuntary. You see, alcohol is a toxic substance. And when we imbibe alcohol, the brain immediately identifies that, and it makes these enzymes say, get it out, get it out, get it out quick. And what happens is these people over here, the normal people, it gives a signal to it's a toxic poison, and it gives a signal to the person to either slow the intake or completely stop. But see, it doesn't work that way with us. Matter of fact, this person over here, when we put alcohol in the body, the brain signals are liver in the pancreas to create enzymes of insufficient quality and quantity. And it breaks the alcohol down to acetaldehyde, down to diacetic acid. But when it gets here to the acetone, the acetate level, instead of passing out the body as water, sugar, and carbon dioxide, it lingers right here, and it creates a craving for another drink. It eventually passes out the body, but not at the rate of 1 ounce per hour. Matter of fact, it takes longer, overnight. You see, right here at this level, before we even process the first drink, this craving produces the second drink. And the second drink produces a craving that large, and the craving produces a third, and it mushrooms right here, and we have a buildup. And the only thing that stops us at this level is a few varied things. We either pass out, we either get locked up, or we get knocked out. That's the only thing that breaks us and separates us from the alcohol. You see, the body is a marvelous mechanism, and when we do too much alcohol, it'll cause us to pass out. That's the only way that it'll stop us from continuing to put too much alcohol in the body. And we're laying there, and people think we're sleeping, but we're not. We're passed out. We're in a passed out state. And when you walk in, you can just smell it all over the room because they're breathing it out and they're emitting it out the pores of their skin. It's got to get out some kind of way. And the moment we get enough out, our book says we should have slept the night around, but the moment that this alcohol emits out of our body and we wake up, the craving is still there. Next thing we want is another drink. We could be hurt, locked up, says, "Mister, can I help you?" "Yeah, give me another drink." And we start it all over again. Now, another aspect is this: when you think about the teenagers, in the States we call them chug-a-lug parties, where they have the funnels, and they pour the spirits down the funnel, and they drink an inordinate amount of alcohol, and then they die from that. And what they're dying from is acute alcohol poisoning, because alcohol affects the central nervous system, which controls your breathing apparatus and your hearts and your major organs. And what it will do is you will relatively overdose from alcohol, because the body cannot metabolize that amount of alcohol that quick. So therefore, when we look at this, we understand the difference between the normal drinker and the abnormal drinker. Now let's look at it like this, a complete and total picture. When we look at this person over here, the 1 and the 9, and we look at the metabolism of the 1 and the 9, it would be elementary that if we never took the first drink, we would never experience the craving. See, this is the body. But everything starts in thought. And Silkworth says the body is sickened as well as the mind. So when we look at the body, we're talking about an allergic reaction. He said he didn't like using that word, but we look at the word allergy and he used it perfectly. Because an allergy is an abnormal reaction to a food or chemical substance. There are people who have allergic reactions to penicillin. There are people who have allergic reactions to peanuts. There are people who have allergic reactions to seafood. But the point is that it's abnormal because the norm, the majority of the people do not react that way. Now, when we look over here in the mind, which is a mental aspect, what he talks about is an allergic reaction of the body, and the manifestation of that is a craving. And the manifestation over here in the mind is an obsession. You see, the first drink is always taken over here in the mind. Mind has to do two things. It has to give you permission to start, it has to give you permission to stop. But it always lets us start, but as my friend, the late Joe McHugh says, we can't stop the starter. So you can start, but you can't stop starting. And you think about that. We can stop, but we can't stop starting. See, right now we all stopped. But the point is that if we don't do something, we'll start again. So how do you stop the starter? Because the starter is over here in the mind. And he would always say, it's not the caboose, it's not the engine, it's not the caboose that kills you, it's the engine, it's the first one. So the first drink over here has to be taken in the mind. If we never put the drink in the body, we'd never experience the craving, and we'd never go through the well-known stages of a spree, and we would never end up here with guilt and remorse. That would never happen. But see, also, in regards to when we're talking about the mind, we all have a thing that's called the emotion barometer. And this emotion barometer, when you look at the human being, we're complex people. We're made up of intellect, we're made up of emotions, and we're also made up of what really, really throws everyone is that we're made up of a complex decision capability, how we make decisions. And the Heffler formula is we're supposed to make decisions intellect over emotions. But I dare say that's the way we make them. Most of them make us emotions over intellect. The human being make mostly emotional decisions. Case in point, that's why they have all the advertisements on the television about the cars, about this, about that, because what they're trying to do is get you to buy something that you really don't need. This emotion barometer that we have is so complex that everyone sitting in the room have one. And by the way, this is where our recovery is going to take place over here in the mind. When we look at the first step, we were powerless, admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, / that our lives had become unmanageable. This is the unmanageability of life. Over here in the mind. Now we can readily admit that we're powerless over alcohol, we have a problem with the drink. But what about the mind? Well, that's the culprit that throws a lot of people a curve, and that's the culprit where the relapse always take place over here in the mind. That's the part for a person that's hard to accept. Because remember, we've got this complex system that's intellect and emotions. Back to this emotional makeup. We as babies that are born, we have this emotional makeup. And how we operate and communicate as human beings is through our emotions. When a baby is hungry, they cry. When a baby is lonely, they cry. They can't communicate any other way. When a baby is hurting, they cry. Unless that baby has some healthy outside stimuli to help them to develop emotionally healthy, they're going to go through life communicating through their emotions. Not going to develop any type of intellect. They're not going to be able to use intellect over their emotions. And Bill says that people like us, we're a case of self-will run riot. And see, our self-will is also attached to these emotions. And you know, it's just amazing how you can stand in line at the supermarket and watch grown people throw tantrums. Act like little children. We have, another thing is we have a sign in our facility. And that's another thing is that it's amazing how grown, intelligent people choose to communicate to each other by swearing and cursing. They get mad, they swear, they curse other people out. Well, this sign that we have in our facility, what it says is that profanity is a strong expression of a weak mind. So if the only way you can communicate your feelings is through profanity, you might need to look at that, because that's an emotional expression of a weak mind. I dare say we should have some more choice words to communicate with each other other than profanity at this stage of the game. So when we look at this emotional makeup, and what happens is that this emotional makeup, at best, even with two parents, even raised in a pretty healthy home, you see, when we go through the developmental stage of infancy, toddler, and from toddler into adolescence stage, and then from adolescent stage into puberty, and then from puberty into teenager. Somewhere we get caught between our developmental stages of puberty and teenagers and then to young adult. And if we add any type of substance like alcohol that suppresses these emotions, we stop growing emotionally. And we're stuck there, even though we are 50, 60, 70-year-old people, but emotionally, we're stuck back there when we start stunting our emotional growth. And it happens like this. Everybody have emotions. And when these emotions build to a point, our brain is a problem-solving, solution-oriented process. And what we're looking for is some type of way to solve this problem. And if we don't have a way to solve this problem, and remember, the way that we used to solve it is through acting out and throwing tantrums. But as we grow older, we can't do that too much. So what we do is we have this emotional buildup, and somebody introduces us to the drink. And when they introduce us to the drink, this is a problem. This is a temporary solution, and I want to emphasize temporary, not permanent. We have this emotional buildup, we reach over and take this drink. This drink suppresses these emotions back down here at this level, and if we have this condition of the body, what it does is suppress the emotions down, but at the same time sets off the craving. Now here's another thing that throws people for a loop. Some people say, well, I didn't have the craving immediately. Our book says that some of us have a predisposed condition, like me. First time I was introduced to alcohol at the age of 6, I got drunk. That's abnormal. Some people had periods of 5, 10 years of honeymoon of drinking, and they didn't develop this craving immediately. But there's new evidence that possibly lends an explanation to this. You see these enzymes over here in our body. Some of us, at the beginning, like me, only had a 50 percentile rate of enzymes. Same way I'm diabetic also. My body does not produce enough insulin. Now there was a while that I could use sugar somewhat safely. But at some point, my insulin level dropped where I had to start using insulin. Now I'm explaining this because my alcoholism was already at the 50 percentile rate. First time I used it, I couldn't use it safely. And I tried for years to use this substance safely. Now some of you all have been here and you had a little bit of 5, 10 years of using. Well, the evidence now possibly shows is that those people were at an 80% rate. So that allowed us to drink a little longer. But at some point in time, when Silkworth says, when we develop this phenomenon of craving, this 80% rate because of the amount we drink and because of age and metabolism, dropped to 50%. So if you're sitting in this room now, you're probably at 50%. You're not going to be at 80% anymore. Because once we develop the phenomenon of craving, we lose all control of our consumption of alcoholism. Now it took years to explain it because people used to ask me, said, well, what about me? I didn't experience the craving the first time I took a drink. Me, I did. Well, that's because you had some degree of your enzymes to be able to metabolize it. But right now you don't have that. And Bill says we're like men who've lost their legs. So the point is that when we look at this and we go through this well-known spree and we end up out here with guilt and remorse, and they use these terms perfectly: irritable, restless, and discontent. When we're irritable, restless, and discontent, the emotional barometer rises again to a level where it's necessary to take a drink. And we have this thing over here in our mind that's called a memory pathway. And this memory pathway, what it does, it always remembers success. See, we don't remember failure. Failure, it discards it. But we remember success. And even though this sets off the craving, but it does temporarily produces a solution. And the point is when we get to this point where we're upset or we're out of kilt in some type of way, the mind says, okay, well, what did we do the last time that we experienced this? Well, we remember this drink over here. And when we succumb and reach over and take this drink, not knowing the condition of the body, see, Silkworth gave us this part about the body. He explained this craving of the body. And when we're in this grip, what happens is, once we put the drink in the body, instead of the mind telling the body what to do, the body tells the mind that you can have another one. So it's a topsy-turvy situation. So here we are. We can't quit over here because of the mind, and we can't drink safely over here because of the body. And we're steady going through this vicious cycle. And finally we get to a point where we say we can't do this anymore. So what we do is we'll stick willpower in here. I can quit. Well, see, the point is, the reason that willpower won't work on this situation is that willpower only works on the truth. It won't work on a lie. And Silkworth called this obsession of the mind, he called it an illusion, delusion, and then he called it an outright lie. You see, when we got this obsession of the mind, willpower don't work on this. It only works on the truth. And my friend Charlie says when he was a little boy, he said they had to take a bath in the same number 3 wash tub. And he said that he was the last one, being the youngest. He had to take the bath in the cruddy water that everybody else had washed. And he says he vividly remembered getting out of the tub, turning his little rear to this pot-bedded stove that they had, but he got too close and it burned him on his rear. And he said it put just the biggest blister on his rear, and he had that blister for a long time. Now he said that he never, ever, ever had the obsession to stick his rear against that stove anymore. And when we look at that, alcohol has done us like that numerous of times. It's burned us over and over and over and over and over and over again. But the reason that we can't see, as our book says, the pain and suffering of a week, a month, or a few months ago is because of this. And this is why willpower won't work. Because where we're inundated and this obsession over here, we can only see what the alcohol is going to do for us and not to us. And what it's going to do for us is a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking the first drink. And it's going to tell us this time it's going to be different. See, always over here in the mind, we set a limit. The limit is over here in the mind. A few. Or one. But once it gets in the body, limit goes out the window. And we're serious when we tell ourselves this. But the grips of an obsession, which is a delusion and an illusion, and it's an outright lie. You see, today, I've been sober 27 years. And I'd have to walk out of here and believe a complete and total lie for me to take a drink. It would have to go something like this. I'd have to go to the pub and say, you know, mister, 27 years ago, I drank alcohol and it almost killed me. Matter of fact, it almost got me locked up for the rest of my life. I lost a family. I lost all my self-respect. I lost all of my standing in the community. I lost everything I had, and it almost killed me. Now today I got 20 pounds in my pocket, and I want to drink of the same thing that almost killed me 27 years ago. Now I'd have to believe a lie to think this is going to be different than 27 years ago. See, one thing about it is this. Because I'm older, my metabolism has slowed down, I'm not going to start where I left off 27 years ago. Remember, this disease is chronic, it's incurable, and as a matter of fact, what it's doing is that it's weakening my body over here. And if I put one drink in my body, I may not come back. I'm not going to metabolize that the way that I did 27 years ago. So I have some truth about that today. I'd have to believe a lie over here in my mind to take a drink of alcohol and think that it's going to be different. It's not going to be different. And it's really a painful experience when the moment that you succumb to this obsession and you put the alcohol in your mouth and then a bit of the truth tell you that you're messing up. But it's too late, because once you put it in there, it sets off this craving. So when we look at this, the unmanageability of life that the steps is going to work on is this emotion barometer. We believe that if we make some adjustments in our personality, which is attached to this emotion barometer, we can keep it at this level and we find it not necessary to take a drink. But willpower won't do that, because this power is human, and this disease that we have is a spiritual disease as well as a disease of the mind and the body. And the point is that we realize because of this allergy that we can't drink. And we can drink, but we can't drink safely. Every time we drink, we catch consequences. Well, we realize because of this condition of the mind, this obsession, and an obsession is an idea that overcomes all other ideas, which constitutes into a lie, we realize that we can't quit. If you can't quit and can't drink, then that renders us powerless. Now, if we're powerless, then that means that the power has to come from something greater than ourselves. And that means that if we make some small adjustments in our personality, in our thinking, over here in our mind, that we will never, ever put the alcohol in the body. And if we never put it in the body, we will never experience the craving. You see, I've never experienced a craving for alcohol in over 27 years. I think people need to know that. My late sponsor, he died with 45 years of sobriety. He never experienced a craving for alcohol in over 45 years. The craving will never come back unless you put it in the body. But to keep it out of the body, it's got to be removed out of the mind. And to be removed out of the mind, you got to have spiritual help. We can't even control our own thinking right now. What makes us think that we can control an obsession to drink? A lot of people miss this. They miss this slash right here. Bill Wilson says that this is the reason that we can't control it, and this is the reason that we can't quit it. And he talks about that on page 44. Would you read that for me, Victor? It's page 44 in your big book. At the beginning.
Page 44 starts with, in the preceding chapters you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely,
Now, that's the first part of it.
or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic.
Now, what that means is this. That means that you cannot drink safely because of the allergy, and you cannot quit because of the obsession. And what he says, if you don't believe this, now he's written 3 chapters, the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, and then chapter 1, chapter 2, to emphasize this point that he's giving us now. And he says, if you don't believe it, just go to the nearest pub and try some controlled drinking. He says, try to abruptly stop. You know, we have a little little joke in the States about the difference between stopping and slowing down. And this fellow was at a stop sign, and he run the stop sign. And the police was sitting over there watching him run the stop sign. And so he stopped him. He says, "Didn't you see the stop sign?" He says, "Yeah, I saw it. I saw you too." He says, "I slowed down." Well, the police took his little flapjack out of his back pocket and started beating him on the head. He says, "Which one you want me to do, stop or slow down?" So there's a distinct difference between slowing down and stopping. And we look at this, and Bill Wilson was very succinctly in how he and Dr. Silkworth assisted him in putting these chapters together to convey a message, is that we were in the grips of a progressive and chronic illness. It gets worse, never better. And he gives us these examples of the jaywalker. He gives us the example of Fred and Jim. Jim was a low-bottom drunk. He drank the business away and then started working for the guy that owned the business that he used to own. Fred was a high-bottom drunk. A lot of ego, a lot of pride. Fred says, as I strolled across the floor, he says, I knew that I had performed a good business deal. There was not a cloud on the horizon. He says, I was pleased, and I knew my partners would be pleased. See, Fred didn't have any pressing problems. He wasn't depressed over here. But remember this emotion barometer. You see, the only way we know how to celebrate is to drink. When we're experiencing excitement, anxiety, a little bit of in our ego, pride and rose up, you see our emotions rise to the point too. I dare say that if I tell everybody in the room that I just hit the lucky dip and I'm giving everybody in the room £1 million, I dare say that there would be very many people left in the room. Because just the anticipation, the anxiety of knowing that you have £1 million, you couldn't focus, you couldn't sit here, you couldn't wait, you would say, when am I going to get my £1 million? And see, that's a good deal. That's not a depressed state. But the point is, this emotion barometer that we have is so complex that we don't have to be feeling bad to be able to want to, as we think, to feel better. And see, our thinking apparatus is, if one feels this good, 2 or 3 must feel better. So the point is that when we're looking at this, our problem of the first step is powerless. Now, if we're powerless, then the power has to come from a power greater than ourselves. And this power greater than ourselves has to work in our minds. It's not going to give me a Arnold Schwarzenegger body. You know, it's not going to make us look like the posh girls, Posh Spice or somebody like that. Where it's going to work in the mind. You see, if we can stop believing and stop thinking that we can drink a substance that our body has proven over and over and over and over again that we cannot drink safely, if we can stop believing and thinking that, we can live with the condition of the body. This would never, ever, ever bother us. That is why we say once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And our book says that the only thing that we have is a daily reprieve continued upon our spiritual maintenance. And this is where the solution is going to work in the mind, not the body. A lot of us, when you hear about the time that we've been separated from the drink, this part over here in the body, it's just like exercise person. See this allergic reaction and this over here, it's doing push-ups. It's getting stronger. This is getting stronger, and if you're not doing anything about your spiritual house over here in your mind, guess what? This is getting stronger than this. And that's why people succumb to this obsession, and this obsession causes them to reach over and take a drink, and you know what? It's so strong until it kills people. They die of acute alcoholism. So therefore, all of our work from here on out is going to be working over here in the mind. Tomorrow morning when we start, we're going to talk about the power that's going to solve this problem and how we find the solution to solve this problem. Thank you for very much. Before James say anything, we didn't want to overtax you tonight. People tired, come in. We just wanted to do a little bit because the mind can only absorb what the rear end will let it. So we want you to get a good rest and we get that's right. So we want you to get a good rest and everything, and we'll start fresh and brand new in the morning. Thank you for your time and attention.